Scott, you want me to?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Good morning. First thing on our agenda today is the consent agenda. Yikes. At least it didn't shock me when it did that. Minutes, payroll, vouchers, monthly earnings, the revocation agreement, and decline of funds for gambling behaviors.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda as listed. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes. Colleen, if you want me to sign that one document so it can go downstairs, we have a couple minutes.
Just give that one. Which one? This is the communication one.
Okay. You two would sign up, please. That needs to go downstairs this morning.
Do I have time to run it down? Would you rather?
Sure.
Take a break?
No, go ahead. It needs to go. I'm sure Kim's in no hurry to get started on everything. Thank you. Well, I guess Molly can take it down too, Colleen. We should keep moving.
All we should.
Thank you. Rest of these in a little bit. Okay.
Sorry. And I can bounce that. And then, just give it to the land desk. Okay, thank you so much.
Sorry. All right.
Way to
How are
make an
you?
entrance.
Hi, CJ.
Good to see you.
Good morning.
Exactly. I'm stuck in it today in Hawaii, so.
Oh, darn. Tough place to be stuck.
Oh.
True. True enough. Well, Steve's over there too, isn't he?
Oh, yes.
I don't know what all you need to sign in there. But there's a few. Okay, it is 9:35 and we have a public hearing scheduled. We have Kim Delavan, Park County Planning and Zoning for the Old Faithful RV Park floodplain permit number 2-23.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair. So the water course for this project is North Fork of the Shoshone. The zoning for this property is actually LUC 96, which is commercial retail, a land use change or land use classification. The planning area is in the North Fork. We received an application for this floodplain permit on February 14th. We also have photographs that were taken associated with the larger project. The applicant requests approval for this floodplain permit. It will operate a portion of this proposed RV park in the map floodplain. And the development associated with will be in the floodplain will be 2.5 camping spots or RV pads and associated water sewer services. And I wanted to mention electrical services, septic tanks, pump tanks, and a drip irrigation controller, and a portion of the campground loop road will all be in the floodplain area. Ownership of this property is Old Faithful RV Park. Location of this, again, it's approximately it's in the North Fork planning area, 15 miles west of Cody. It's on the south side of Highway 1620. It's on the north side of the North Fork of the Shoshone. It's just west of Jim Creek. Has 2 addresses, and a portion of the southern strip of this property is in the floodplain, and a portion of the east side of the property is in the floodplain. And that floodplain courses from the North Fork to the Shoshone and also Jim Creek. Site characteristics, again, I mentioned what's to the north of this, to the south of this. Both Jim Creek and the North Fork, those waterways are lined with vegetation, some trees. There is some slope. That slope is from the northwest to the southeast. And close to the river and close to Jim Creek, there's some slopes that possibly exceed 65%. No structures on the property. In terms of neighboring use, you can see in figures, in figure 2, you see neighboring uses, primarily residential to the north and some to the south and southeast. There is some ag to the southeast, commercial to the south, and exempt property BLM directly to the west, and then a little bit further to the east. I mentioned this property is subject to land use change 96. That was approved by the Board of County Commissioners in 1994. And that allows for the permitting of commercial retail uses. And currently, this project plan is the applicant overall is seeking approval of this proposed RV park. And that will be through the site plan review process. Again, a portion of this property is in the floodplain. And Madam Chair, you see in figure 3, there's a site plan for the proposed use, and in figure 4, a utility plan for the proposed use. Additional project details. These are from applicant statements. Septic system will not alter the ground elevation or grade in the area it will be installed. No additional fill will be deposited in the floodplain related to this installation. Only native soils and gravels will be used in the installation. And the applicant said Old Faithful RV Park is seeking to make improvements to this newly acquired property, and associated infrastructure will not only benefit people that are utilizing the property, also be safe for people living downstream. Due to the fact that partly there will be a subsurface drip irrigation discharge of the proposed septic system out of the floodplain. Public notice, of course, this is a public hearing. We had public notices in the Cody Enterprise on March 2nd and March 14th. Neighbor notices were sent on March 2nd. Agency notices were sent out on February 23rd. You saw a list of people we notified, including the county engineer. We also notified DEQ. We notified the Corps. DEQ is not listed in that paragraph, but we did notify DEQ. Of course, we've not heard back yet. You saw in our responses, we've not heard back from the Corps of Engineers, Army Corps of Engineers. Treasurer's office responded, said park taxes are paid in full. We did get a response from DEQ, and I'll read part of that letter. I know you all had a chance to read that. So DEQ said, for any dredged or fill activity associated with this project that occurs on waters of the United States, possibly a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers and a water quality certification from DEQ would be required. If dredge or fill activity occurs on stream or wetland not associated with waters of the United States, then they need to work with DEQ. Also, DEQ said for activities that were cleared, graded, or otherwise disturbed, 1 or more acres of land, and there is the potential for discharge of stormwater into surface waters, coverage under a stormwater permit must be obtained from DEQ. And for any point source discharge to surface waters not related to stormwater runoff, a DEQ permit may be required. Those are the comments from DEQ, Madam Chair. We also had a letter from Trout Unlimited. We received that in early March. You had a chance to see that. Oh, I apologize for that.
It's okay.
They had concerns about the potential impacts to water quality in the North Fork. In our staff report, we said there was no public comments. We did get one public comment from Kim Bergen. You had a chance to see this. I'll just try to summarize that. Ms. Bergen said that she lives across the river, south of the west portion of this park. Her main concern appears to be the septic tanks within 600 feet of the center line of Jim Creek. She said with 4 RVs, you could have 4 people each. Full capacity mean you'd be serving 180 people. She also mentioned that the number that we take for an RV is up to 100 gallons per day of septage. Again, if you have 44,500 gallons of effluent per day. So she's concerned about that. She's concerned about these tanks in a floodplain, catastrophic failure going into the North Fork of the Shoshone. Also said Jim Creek is a potential flooding threat. She mentioned the Loma that exists for her residents should have nothing to do with the Jim Creek flood area, as Jim Creek enters the river below their property. Also, Ms. Bergen mentioned that the Berry House referenced in the engineering report is 200 feet downstream from Jim Creek. Essentially, Ms. Bergen feels like, she's opposed to this permit. In part, she believes that they should either get a LOMA to establish the actual floodplain or give up 4 RV spots in the road and the associated materials with that. Madam Chair, so standards and evaluation of this. I'm sorry, one more thing, Madam Chair. You had a chance to read this too. We did get a response from Public Works yesterday that was shared with you. So Mr. Edwards said that his understanding is this improvement will not result in any fill or net fill in the designated floodplain. And he feels as a result, the flood elevations are not likely to change from this development, Jim Creek or North Fork. He talked about the road, a looped road, and should there be a flood, a portion of that could be impacted by a flood event. He mentioned that the lowest road elevation is around 5,572 feet. Bottom of the Jim Creek channel is around 5,565 feet. So obviously the channel is lower than the elevation of the road. Again, he said the small section road may require maintenance. He also mentioned that Mr. Edwards mentioned tanks, pumps, and controllers are within the floodplain. Not ideal. He understands the necessity of that given elevation. Again, he mentioned the ground elevation at the location is 5,576, higher than the natural flow of Jim Creek. He does recommend that wiring and cabling to the pump control system be installed by a licensed electrician, follow NEC requirements. And he also recommends that the tanks, of course, should this be approved, the tanks be properly anchored or maintained with sufficient liquid to prevent them from floating. Response from Mr. Edwards. So in our standards, Madam Chair, number 1 is danger to life and property due to flooding or erosion damage. We have an applicant response. They talk about the posts on which the controllers and pumps are mounted. They could snag debris. However, the applicant feels like that should not contribute to higher flood elevation. And he mentioned that those electrical systems will have fuses and also breakers that could trip should there be an emergency. He said they will follow NEC requirements. He also mentioned, again, this is the applicant, if the erosion around the surrounding ground is several feet, the system could be exposed, damaged, leaking raw sewage into the floodwaters. However, he mentioned that there will be, and we have hope here, it should be actually HDPE, high density polyethylene pipe, Schedule 40 pipe, and new concrete tanks. He feels like that chance should be minimized. However, if there is raw sewage that spills, the maximum amount, 6 tanks, 1,500 gallons per tank, would be 9,000 gallons. He estimates going into, at flood stage, a river at 4.5 million gallons per minute. So dilution, essentially, Madam Chair. Our second standard is susceptibility to the proposed facility and its content to flood damage and the effect of such damage on the owner. Again, the developed portion of this property is not likely susceptible to flood damage. In this response, they talk about elevations. The applicant said there's been no flood damage that I'm aware of during the past 100 years. Berry residents, again, just east of Jim Creek, down gradient from the RV park. He talks about the elevation. He said the elevation at the northwest corner of the Berry residence is at 5,569 feet as compared to the West Jim Creek Bank elevation of 5,578. So obviously Berry residence is lower. Mm-hmm. And the lower point of the bench is approximately 5,568. Again, he said, which is lower than the bottom of the proposed septic tanks at 5,570. He talks about a Loma for the Bergen residence, which is across the river, just south of the west portion of this project. Base flood elevation of 5,567.5. Lowest adjacent grade there, 5,590.7. And also the applicant said the North Fork drops approximately 2 feet between roads 6FU and the outfall of Jim Creek. So again, talking about the base flood elevations. Number 3, our standard is the danger that materials may be swept into other lands or injury to others. Again, he talks about these tanks and piping might be possible to be swept downstream. Talks about it being anchored, the tanks anchored to prevent it from floating, or liquid in it to prevent it from floating. Our 4th criteria is the compatibility of the proposed use with existing anticipated development. This is a new system. Applicant's response: necessary for the proposed development, currently an abandoned RV park. Number 5, the safety of access to the property in times of flood for ordinary emergency vehicles. Access to this property will be from the highway that leads to Cody, upstream from Jim Creek. So essentially that this flooding here should not affect access to this project. Costs of providing governmental services during and after the flood conditions, maintenance and repair of streets, utilities, so on. Applicant said the installation of the septic will not increase the cost or come from government. Number 7 of the standards is the expected heights, velocity, rate of rise, and sedimentation of the floodwaters. Applicant said there is a chance for sedimentation from a flood, could require repairs to basically the equipment that they have installed. Number 8 is necessity to the facility for a waterfront location. Talked about the septic system in this location due to elevation. And he said the new leach field is at 5,582 in elevation at its lowest corner and is 100 feet from the creek where it is in its deepest channel. Number 9, availability of alternative locations. Talks about 2.5 camping spots, the tanks, pumps, tanks, and drip controller, and a portion of the road. He said there are no other alternative areas to locate these facilities without losing the 4 RV spots. And then number 10 standard is the relationship of this proposed use to the land use plan. The applicant said the proposed use is the same as the historic use. talks a little bit about the 1998 land use plan. Madam Chair, we recommend approval. If I could, I'll just briefly read our condition should you decide to approve this. This permit shall only apply if the Old Faithful RV site plan is approved. We have the application number. The applicant shall provide a response from the Park County engineer prior to commencing the permitted activities. We do have a response. The floodplain development, number 3, this floodplain development permit only applies to the construction and or placement of 2.5 RV pads or spaces, related water sewer services, septic tanks and pumps, pump tanks and drip irrigation controllers, and a portion of that loop road. Installation of the septic and irrigation systems shall be NEC compliant. This floodplain development permit is valid for 1 year from date of approval. County personnel may conduct site visits during or following the completion of construction, and the applicant shall notify the floodplain administrator when project work is complete and provide photographs of as-built conditions. Any changes to the proposed project or development in the floodplain that are not expressly addressed by this permit shall require a separate floodplain development permit. And number 9, the applicant shall otherwise comply with the Park County, Wyoming 2015 development standards and regulations. And Madam Chair, if I may, I just wanted to add one thing because I received a call from someone yesterday who wondered if this floodplain development permit is approved, does that give the applicant permission to do this work prior to site plan approval? I told this person no. In our regs, it says in regard to site plan review is required prior to the construction or commencement of any use listed in table 4.7, which includes campgrounds. So our conclusion is that site plan would have to be approved before any construction commences. Okay. I'm happy to answer questions should you have any.
I have one for you, and it's on condition 3, and it may just be semantics, but it says this floodplain development permit applies only to the construction and or placement of 2.5 RV spaces and related water and sewer services. To me, that reads like the related water and sewer services are only for those 2.5 RV spaces. We're talking about water and sewer services for the entire park. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, my understanding should floodwaters rise to, to that elevation where the floodplain ends, it would affect these 2.5 spaces. And my understanding was we meant that it relates just to the associated material that would be in that flood area. Now I understand that electricity is in lines and right, but that was our understanding. Whatever is in the actual floodplain. Okay.
That's really weird.
Madam Chair, Kim, what is NEC?
So NEC is the
NEC compliant.
Yeah, is good question, Commissioner Teal. Madam Chair, National Electrical Code.
Okay.
So my understanding is they'll follow code.
Okay.
Well, they should follow code.
Well, they have to. It's commercial. Okay.
Any other questions from the commissioners at this time? If not, this is a public hearing. So I would ask if there are any comments on this floodplain application from the public. Anyone that would like to speak to it? If you'd state your name for the record, please.
My name is Brian Clarkson, resident of the North Fork Planning area. Speaking today on behalf of the Wapiti Valley Preservation Group. Madam Chair, Board of Commissioners, thank you for the opportunity to comment. We don't have any issues with this RV park. I mean, it is an RV park. It was historically an RV park. One of the concerns that we do have is the density of the RV park, and part of that density is putting the septics in the floodplain. I think paragraph number 9 or item number 9 in the packet talks about the availability of alternative locations not subject to flooding or erosion damage. And it's stated that there is an alternative location, but it just involves reducing it by 4 RV sites. Today, I counted between the tunnels and the Haska 14 different RV parks. And so I guess I would ask that if we're going to build another 15 RV park, which again, that's what it's historically used for, that we, do the best that we can to protect our waterways. And that would be to not allow installation of septics in the floodplain permit. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member of the public have any input? You'd state your name for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Rob Bergen, the adjacent neighbor across the river. Just had a few comments. I think your question, my understanding is those tanks are for at least all 45 RV slots based on the map. And it has been unclear to me exactly how many of the septic services combined for cabins and apartments and laundry facilities and other parts of the development. So again, I feel like this process of clarifying floodplain use is a little bit cart in front of the horse until we understand exactly what's going into the floodplain. I understand there are plans, but the plans have changed based on the information that the public had for the site plan hearing versus the plan that's for this hearing. And the 1,500 gallon 6 tanks is the first time I've actually seen a confirmation of that amount of volume. And I know that doesn't include other parts of septic on this property. Okay. Just some things that I saw as I read through, it says in the additional project details on page 6, the subsurface drip irrigation discharge will be out of the floodplain. So I'm confused on subsurface irrigation discharge because there is a proposed gray water system, and this is a UIC system, is my understanding looking at it, which is a DEQ controlled event. I think they call it a class 5, where a commercial septic size system is injecting into a proposed public water source or a water source used for people. What is not removed from that floodplain that is existing are the tanks. As we move to page 7, I did see that the several points in here where, you know, the applicant has said the post could snag debris, it could cause higher flooding elevation. We could expose voltage line power to the public in that event, but it should prevent injury if we have NEC compliance. Okay. The system could be exposed leaking raw sewage into the floodwaters. It's from the applicant, so it's what we're trying to avoid, I think, in the process. So simply moving this out of the floodplain certainly reduces that effect. You know, comments like the amount of raw sewage would be minuscule. We're talking about engineering reports, and you know, I'd like to see real numbers, finite numbers about what's minuscule, what's an acceptable amount of sewage in our public waterways. A minuscule amount. Yeah, I'm confused about a lot of things from this that are spilling over from the last meeting last week with planning and zoning board. It goes on to say that there's been no flood damage that I'm aware of during the last 100 years. No flood damage in 100 years that I'm aware of. I've lived there since '96. I can't speak specifically to Jim Creek flood damage there, but I know we had at least one motorcycle wreck on Jim Mountain Road when Jim Mountain Road flooded across, which is a function of Jim Creek drainage. There was another time that the road was closed for that. I know up higher in the Wapiti Heights, I think subdivision up there, they've had multiple flood issues with sliding homes and things going on there. And I have pictures this spring of the old bridge abutment directly above this property, moving feet off the bank and tipping sideways. So flood damage is certainly real, and to say, you know, hadn't happened in 100 years, this is a spring that may not be Jim Creek, but certainly speaks to the potential for Jim Creek to flood easily in that area. And again, things, you know, on page 8 that these tanks could be swept downstream. They could be empty at the time of the flood. Could be, would be, might be. I don't know. I just see a lot of questions that before we propose, let's build in the floodplain. There's a lot of questions and no firm answers that I'm seeing in that. And again, to say that there, you know, with what Brad had said, that there's no way to do this any other way without losing 4 spots. Density is a word I used in the last week's meeting several times. 45 RV spots, 12 cabins, 2 3-bedroom apartments. laundry facility, 2 shower houses or shower facilities within the large building, 2 bathroom facilities within the large building. One thing that never comes up seems to be the water treatment facility. That's going to be a building to treat a well on site that already has coliform bacteria in it, which is a function of waste getting into a well. There's 4 abandoned septic systems that will be abandoned on site in place. There is a wastewater coming from irrigation across the highway that moves through this property into what is now an unclassified or could be classified, we don't know, wetlands that is proposed to be removed and replaced with RV spots. It still has to get downhill. I know that water goes downhill without pumping it. So it's moving from uphill to downhill across this property. The county engineers looked at a stormwater wastewater proposal and approved that, is my understanding. Kim may be able to answer that for us, but I just am concerned when you add all these together. Who's seeing the big picture? Who is making sure that the irrigation water and the wastewater and the gray irrigation drip system and the underground injection system, everything is just seems like it's right at the edge. There's 2 Presby systems, which I don't know if I would call them experimental, but they're not the standard septic system that we see in normal use. So everything has to be sort of different and at a cutting edge level to qualify, and then say, and why don't we be part of it in the floodplain? Those are my concerns. And I guess it was my wife that wrote the letter concerning the floodplain lomas. We did get a loma. We're 20 to 30 feet out of the floodplain just to make sure we didn't build there. I didn't pay for a survey on another property I have on the North Fork to make sure we're at least 20 or 30 feet away from any development within the floodplain. I met with a client yesterday that did a loma on the North Fork to make sure he is out of the floodplain during his construction. I'm not opposed to the process of what we're doing and even the RV park. But because we got an approval last week with 21 conditions and we're asking for an approval or staff is suggesting approval with this many questions, I'm just wondering with the, I'm sorry, is it LUC? With the LUC, once this is approved and any conditions come back, I don't know when the process just keeps moving forward with no more public input, with no more research, or if it starts over, or what happens then. So I would just ask that we consider that we get good data and make good decisions before we continue marching forward with approvals, assuming that down the road it'll get canceled by somebody else if it's bad, because we don't know what's happening down the road. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Bergen. Any other public comment? Any other public comment?
My name is Brett Reed. I'm the engineering associate. I represent the client, Old People RV Park. And I guess I thought maybe I should just address a couple of the comments that people have raised and concerned. I want to make sure that those are properly discussed. I guess not properly. So, number one, I think we talk about is just the septic tanks and their location. They are in the current floodplain as defined by FEMA. As Mr. Bergen alluded to, there's been his property and adjacent property to the east that have been either removed from the floodplain through the LOMA process or have been granted an elevation certificate, if that's the proper terminology for the Erie residents. And both of those, excuse me, look at what the flood elevations are. And so in my report that I submitted with the flood application, I tried to look at those elevations, excuse me, those elevations with respect to where our septic tanks are located on the property. And I tried to draw that out in that map to show that and indicate that, you know, that the river is falling along that section there that Mr. Bergen's property, the elevation, the flood elevation was at 67.5, I believe. And if we fall 2 feet along the river, we're going to assume, and of course, we're making some assumptions here, but assuming that the channel doesn't change drastically, I think we can safely say that the flood elevation is going to be lower downstream than it would be at Mr. Bergen's property, which is considerably lower than where the tanks are at this property. So my point being is that although the flood map shows it's in the floodplain, if we were to apply for a moment and go through all the data, we would not be in the floodplain. I realize that that's not, I mean, we're applying for a floodplain application permit because we didn't go through that process because of the time that was going to take and the expense. Feeling this might be a quicker alternative. And so I that's why we're here, number one. Number two, on the tanks themselves, we did mention, and Kim pointed that out in his report, that these are concrete tanks. They'll be filled with fluid, except for the pump tanks, which was a concern. So as the park gets used, sewage flows in, we pump it out of the pump tanks into the drip irrigation leach field. Those tanks could be empty, so we can't control when those are going to be empty or full. And so those tanks will have to have additional anchorage so that if it were to flood, which we don't believe it will, they would not pop up out of the ground and float away. And so we've done that in other places, and we intend to do that. These tanks, the 9,000 gallons, only serve the 45 RV spots. They don't serve any other part of the campground. All those other systems are out of the floodplain. And with regard to the dilution, I think I've mentioned in the report, we have a flood stage gallons per minute of flood in there, and we also talk about the gallons per tank. So when we calculate the dilution rate, so that part is it's a known quantity. Of course, it depends on the level of your flood, but I mean, I try to give a minimum. If it were more than that, the dilution rate's only going to be greater. I think that the electrical piece there, if everything is installed, everything will have to be installed per NEC code, and that will make sure that if we have an event like that and an electrical system is compromised, that breaker or fuse, depending on the setup they choose, will cut the power from those systems, and so we don't have a risk of electrocution. And that's no different than anyone else's house or commercial facility. So I think we're protected that way. The post that I talked about snagging debris, it could raise the elevation, and I didn't want to say it doesn't, but the amount that it could is going to be small. I can't say how much it's going to be, but I don't think it's going to affect anyone else adversely, I guess is the point. And so I guess I would also request, do you have any questions for me?
Madam Chair,
Just at the point of, you've got 45 RV spots, bringing it back down to 41. If you didn't even bother with the floodplain, what was the thinking on that? Why go through all these extra processes just for the 4 spots?
2.5.
Yeah, 2.5 actually.
Just dollars?
It just, just the dollars. I mean, the client has paid a certain amount for the property. It's going to cost a certain amount to construct. The revenue from additional spots help pay for the loan to build the property and to buy the property. So that's what his reason was.
I'm sure. Brett,
Yes.
what is the time and the process of a LOMA?
Well, so the process would be to survey the cross section of Jim Creek and the river right there, and then analyze the flow rate of both those two. and come up with a base flood elevation in that.
How long would that take?
And that takes, can take up to 2 months with the review from the FEMA and then the time of doing stuff. So you're looking at a minimum of 3 months.
Any other questions for Mr. Reed? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other public comment? Hearing none.
Madam Chair, I move to close public hearing.
Second.
So moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Thanks. It's the pleasure of the board, and I'm assuming that condition number 2, if approval is warranted, condition number 2 would go away. Because that is the response from the county engineer, which we have received. Is that correct? Okay. Just wanted to clarify.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
can I ask Mr. Dolan the question?
Yeah.
Yes.
If we were to approve this floodplain today, does that say we're approving what they want to do in that floodplain? What they're proposing?
That is my understanding. Yeah, those things, those tanks, those water lines, electrical lines, posts. Yes,
So we would be approving those things right now.
yes. But again, my understanding is because this entire project is subject to site plan review, my interpretation of our regs is there should not be any construction done. I assume with this floodplain permit, it's approved until that site plan is approved. So it would give them essentially to install these items, should that site plan be approved. Your approval today.
Commissioner.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I, as long as we keep condition 1, correct. That's
Right.
which is, and with that, I just like the public to know that that is the site plan, application that will come back, correct, before this. So if we do approve this today, it's just simply the floodplain part. Nothing can happen until the overall site plan, of which which will come back in another public hearing, with which we can even add conditions to that at that time. So this isn't the end of it right here.
Correct. Yeah.
And at that time, will we also be waiting for the Corps and the DEQ to give a full statement from them on this before that application is approved?
I don't know the timing of those things, but I know from P&Z, I don't remember exactly their conditions, but there were several. And I believe some of those were comments from the Corps and DEQ and from the state engineer's office, if my memory is correct.
Let's go back to that for a minute, and maybe Mr. Reed knows the answer of doing a few of these also, but this is pretty complicated with all of the state and federal agencies that are involved in review. And to Mr. Bergen's question about how does this all get lumped together and who does the final on what's working with what? I mean, we have DEQ, we have the Corps, we have our own staff doing reviews on what's allowed on the LUC. All of those things need to come together. Who looks at the entire picture of the septic, the water, the Corps, the river, the whole thing? Who looks at that whole thing and says this is all compatible?
I know, Madam Chair, that DEQ, if it's approvable, if they can, they will approve the septic and they will approve the domestic water portion of this.
Right.
My understanding is, as Mr. Bergen mentioned, there's some irrigation water that evidently comes from the north, under the road, comes to this property. That is something that my understanding is the state engineer's office will have to look at.
Okay.
Army Corps, I was looking at a letter from the Deer Creek Ranch floodplain permit, and in that letter, the Army Corps said they regulate the discharge of dredged and fill material into waters of the United States. Madam Chair, I could be wrong, and we've not heard from the Army Corps. But I don't believe here we're talking about dredging
Right.
or fill material into any waters, let alone waters of the United States. So I'm uncertain if Army Corps would even be involved in this project.
Okay.
But Brett may know more than I do.
Mr. Reed?
We submitted a request for jurisdictional determination in the Army Corps to see whether or not they would have jurisdiction. I received a response yesterday afternoon in the email from the Army Corps. They said they do not have jurisdiction for this project. That being said, the DEQ still has requirements for that. And those basically are, you know, if you're gonna fill or dredge in wetlands, which we have, there's a little reservoir that was a man-made reservoir on this property that we intend to fill in. And so that addresses whether they're natural or man-made wetlands. They're not natural because the reservoir was created by blocking the draw. The man-made ones are man-made ones that were created to offset disturbed wetlands. And so this reservoir was not created for that. I want to verify that with the DEQ for sure, but I don't think that will apply. So we will be allowed to fill that little reservoir in and allow that water to just pass through the property like it did prior to that reservoir being in place.
But and Madam Chair, that pond work is not
Right.
in the floodplain.
That's right.
Yeah, it's everything. It's west.
So,
Okay.
so with regard to how this all comes together and who all looks at the big picture, so the DEQ has several ways that they'll review this. Number one, of course, is the treated water system. And they'll review that, delivering water to people. And part of that is when they review that, they'll look to make sure that we have a valid state engineering permit for the wells. The well that will be used for drinking water. Number two is the septic system applications for the septic system. They'll be reviewing those. Number three, they'll also be reviewing a UIC permit for the property because we're discharging more than the set amount of gallons in the number of acres. So the DEQ is I would say the major reviewer of the property and the systems on the property to make sure that the public health and safety and welfare is being protected per their requirements. Does that answer your question?
It does. I guess I'd ask you one further question.
Sure.
We know that the site plan has to come back in front of the commissioners. Do you believe that those applications to DEQ and anyone else involved will be completed before it is requested that the site plan comes back before the commissioners?
As the stipulations currently from our planning and zoning meetings say, they only require that those be approved prior to construction. That doesn't mean that when you approve the site plan, you can say, well, it should be approved contingent upon that as well. So you could approve the site plan to say, if the DEQ doesn't approve it, well, then the approval goes away.
I'm just wondering about process and what we're going to have and the availability we have to continue to review this with the information that we receive.
So it would all depend, I guess, on when this comes back before the commissioners, whether or not those applications would be approved or not.
Okay.
Prior to that.
Yes.
So if you were to wish that those would be approved prior to your meeting, then we'll have to wait until they go back before we schedule that.
We might have to have that conversation with our planning director and look at the time frame, what's
Okay.
allowed in the regs and that type of thing. I would certainly like to have those back before we make a decision, but that's just me.
One more question for Mr. Dillon. So if we approve this today and this becomes approved, is this binding then towards the developer to the final site plan, or can they decide to abandon part of it? I mean, the final site plan is going to be the determining factor, but is this binding then to the landowner that they must put this in there?
No, Commissioner Stewart, Madam Chair, my understanding is they this would give them permission to put this in at the appropriate time, but it's not binding that they would have to put it in. And I assume they could put in something that has a smaller impact or nothing at all. But yeah, to answer your question, this is
Okay.
not binding. But they certainly couldn't do more. They could do this or less.
Madam Chair, I'm going to go ahead and take a stab here. I believe that this application pertaining to the floodplain is covered with the conditions. As the site plan comes forward, we can halt, stop, modify at any point there. They cannot do anything until the site plan is approved. Therefore, Madam Chair, I'd move to approve the floodplain permit 2-23
With the conditions.
with full conditions.
Except number two.
Number 2 is fine, it's already covered, but I mean, if you want to remove number 2, that's fine, I don't care. But I think number 1 is the most important, because without DEQ approval, which governs the septic, that seems to be the main concern. Without that, it's not going to get a site plan approval.
Okay, you have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Motion to a second to approve floodplain application number 2-23, Old Faithful RV Park. Any further discussion on the motion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion passes.
All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, commissioners.
Resolution 2023-15.
All right. Thank you, Colleen.
And we are running slightly behind. Is Casey here? Okay. Thanks, Kim.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Condition 8.
Sorry.
Can't change.
We're running a little behind.
Morning.
Good morning. Okay, the next thing on our agenda, Jason McQuiston, District Ranger, Shoshone National Forest, with some updates for us and.
Good morning. First, I will introduce Kathy Miner. Kathy is going to be the acting work supervisor now. She comes to us from the Custer Gallatin, out of Montana. So she, Custer butts right up against the Shoshone for the portion. So Kathy's somewhat familiar with some of the things we have going on at our county area.
Cool.
So,
Welcome. Thank you.
thank you for the opportunity to meet with you all this morning. And I can try and help make up time. I'll be brief.
Okay.
So just a few updates, one of the big things we have going on, in the Clark Forest Ranger District, we're moving into our next project area, High Lakes. That'll be a combination of forest health management and fuels mitigation. We'll use a combination of field treatments. It could be mechanical. We could do a little prescribed burning up there. We'll also look to do some timber harvest up there. That may become a little more of the challenge for us now. We'll have to kind of evaluate how we package our sales up there with the closing of RY Timber out of Livingston, Montana. They were one of our big purchasers. Hopefully we'll be able to get a little more business from Sun Mountain out of Deer Lodge. They've come down for a few sales. Hopefully they'll be amenable to coming down for a few more now that RY isn't doing as much business or none at all really.
Okay.
So two this year, we're looking at probably trail maintenance. As you know, we had significant flooding last year impacted a number of our wilderness trails. We'll shoot for doing probably another 300 miles this year through a combination of our own crews. We'll also pull in some Montana Conservation Corps crews. So that's where we're headed with that. Big thank you to the Park County. One of the things we have a strong partnership on is that road maintenance agreement that we have with you all. I'm looking at probably another approximately 25 miles that you guys do the maintenance and we kick in some funding.
Okay, appreciate that.
Yeah. And then kind of the last big thing I'll bring up, we are looking at hopefully, and as you well know, weather dependent, looking at 2,000 acres of field reduction work this year across the 3 ranger districts. A lot of that will be accomplished through prescribed burning. We'll look at some additional acres through mechanical treatments. Again, prescribed burning all depend on what kind of a weather window we get this spring. That's when we do a majority of our prescribed burning is in the spring, because usually by the time summer rolls around, we're out of prescription, and then in the fall, typically we get busy nationally to the point where we're sending resources out to support wildland fire management across the country.
Well, okay. I had a question the other day about slash piles. Do you all still allow public access to slash piles prior to the burning? I mean, I know there's some burning eventually, but is there public access to those for firewood?
Yep.
Okay.
Whenever we have the opportunity to, rather than just burn it, if we can make it available to the public where they can utilize that for firewood, we're definitely public's welcome to come into the office and get a firewood permit. And we can, depending on where they're at, kind of direct them to some of those slash piles that are better for firewood.
Okay. I knew you used to do that, but I wasn't sure if you still did. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Thoughts or questions? What's going on?
Madam Chair, Kathy, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. I mean, yeah, you're somewhat new, but Custer isn't really that far away. But, or not Custer Town, but Custer National Forest. But,
Yeah, for sure.
I guess my question is, the travel management plan. I mean, I don't really care. It could stay the way it is, but I mean, that's been kind of out in limbo now for 7 years. Is that going to be a priority of yours to just get that moving again, or are we going to just, start over? I mean, usually we review those over about every 5 years, and this one's been in the makings for 7. So
Yeah, and I apologize, but I'm on day 2. And but my understanding is that we are continuing to work on it. We've got a lot of holes in the
yeah, COVID,
organization.
everything else that's happened.
Yeah,
there's
and
been a
we're
lot of
trying to
things.
fill positions, but it is one of the priorities for the forest, and so we'll be working on it as we can. And when a permanent forest supervisor comes in, they'll probably take that up as a priority. And in the meantime, I'll keep moving forward with it.
Well, you can throw it in file 13 too. So I don't care. But welcome. I think I can say for everybody, we have a great working relationship with Casey's been great since he's been here, and everybody over there. So I hope to continue the communication. That's what we're here for today.
Thanks.
We appreciate it. We appreciate the back and forth, so we know what's going on and you guys know what our thoughts are. We appreciate that. Anything else for the Forest Service?
Just look forward to a different role. Don't have to work with you law enforcement no more.
That's for those, if you don't know, he was our sheriff for an awful lot of years before he decided to actually turn that over to his brother and run for county commissioner. So
His other brother, Daryl.
his other brother, Daryl.
No, it's always been a good work relationship.
Yeah. Good.
And definitely likewise, I've appreciated the relationship that we've had with all of you.
Good. Thank you. Anything else for the Forest Service today?
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming in. Sorry I'm so short.
Yeah,
Do
thank
you
you.
like
No.
visiting?
That's all right. Anytime, let us know, we're more than happy to do that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Yes,
Right back on time.
right. Cool. Okay. You must be Matt.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, the next thing on our agenda is Matt Marsh, the BLM District Manager for the Wind River Bighorn Basin District, current projects in the district, and welcome.
Thanks, Madam Chairman. Nice to meet you all. Just my main objective was just to come over and meet you all and ask if there's something BLM should be doing different or.
Wait, we're,
Maybe
no.
it's more of- is that a 2-hour one? We can definitely sit down together and chat about whatever, don't need to take up time in the commission, just give me a call or anytime. I'll drop my cards off here.
Well, I would say, first of all, we have a great relationship with Cade. We appreciate his honesty in working through projects. We have, of course, several projects that we work with them on road issues, use issues, those kinds of things, and we've always had great honesty and trying to move forward in the best way we can. So we appreciate that work with the BLM. I know there's always projects that are a little contentious for people, but I don't think we've had that many issues that we're dealing with. We have one project right now that we're working on that's a little bit of a contentious issue. It's taken a little longer than we figured it would. It's a little bit of a road design problem here north of town. It's a kind of a dangerous road, and we need to lay it back and open it up a little bit more, and that's taken a lot longer than we thought it should. But we're gaining on it. So Lloyd, I know you're
I'll leave it at that. I'll just-
okay. He's well aware of it.
Seven
Seven
RP.
RP. Yeah, it's the road. But other than that, I think things have gone pretty well. Have you got any major projects in the area that you know of that are coming, or?
You know, if y'all been out to Kubar, there's one pile there that's come along pretty well. They're on concrete and cold and snow, but it's come along, so that's good news there. And we have several new funding streams through the, as y'all know, the bill and the IRA funds that are coming down, and we're just now putting in for more of those kind of funding projects. So if you all have projects you have in mind, you think, here's some county ground here and a field right next to it, it's next to a creek, it'd be a great place for a new campground or something. You know, we're all ears for that kind of stuff. So those kind of projects, as cooperating projects, get a lot of visual, you know, if it's not just us or one party, there's a lot of visual priority.
One of the things we've had discussions on, and I don't know about availability, and we haven't really talked to Kate very much about it either, but we're always looking for some type of gravel, you know, some type of gravel pit or mining areas where we can get road maintenance materials. And because of the amount of federal and state-owned land in our area, it's a little hard to come up with some of that without affecting farm ground or being too far away. So those are just some thoughts. I know our staff, public works staff, has been looking and having some conversations about some possible locations, but I don't know how far we're getting on that, but that is an area that we need to take a look at.
Matt, I apologize because you are here for what's about to happen, but I myself, I'm very frustrated with, and I know it's above your level, but as cooperating agencies on projects that come up with not just projects, but issues, whether it's sage grouse, grazing, solar issues. Every time we enter in, we have to re-enter into a cooperating, an MOU with the BLM. We put together 2 years ago a natural resource management plan that we were asked to by your agency to be that cooperating agency, but it's like reinventing the wheel every time something comes up. If there's any way to get a blanket coverage where we can either participate or we can't. It just seems silly that we have to go through this, and sometimes it's such short notice. We only meet 3 times a month, and usually only 2 of them on action issues, the first and the third Tuesday. So moving forward, if there's any way that you can pass along the frustration that we have trying to work with federal agencies, particularly the BLM, on as a cooperative.
I will pass that on, and I did read in the paper the MOU that you all approved for the solar. And unfortunately, that's the way most federal agencies, including BLM, work, is those big NEPA documents come out and they get comments and they ask for cooperating agencies, and you all sign up to be a cooperator, and then another one comes out.
And then another one, yeah. And every time they do it, it seems like they change the rules just slightly too. I mean, the first couple that we entered into, you had a contact person, and if that contact person happens to be on vacation sick, just we had a backup that could at least sit in on the community. And the latest one doesn't even allow a backup person, so. I mean, that, are we trying to narrow the field to, for limit our input or what? I mean, it just, you can't help but think that sometimes, so.
I would just offer it up that I would be that person you could go to if you couldn't get a hold of that particular interest, whether it's the solar, just pass it through Cater myself, and we'll give that up and say, hey, Park County is not getting feedback on this. Because give them a call and we'll bird dog and tell you all that.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Other things that I mentioned, the funding streams, I think one of the projects we want to put in funding for is the Rattlesnake Fountain. Kate hasn't told me too much about what all that involves. If y'all have input on that, I'm sure you can talk with Kate.
We are working that through a couple directions. I think Lloyd and I both sit on an outdoor rec collaborative that's looking at access for recreation there. And I know there's been some other conversations for different ways to maybe make that happen. But I do know that Kate's been working on it. So appreciate that. It is an area that the public certainly mentioned a few years ago in a survey as wanting access to that area. It's just a place to get to right now.
That sounds like the local landowner isn't real keen on having access through there.
No.
We'll keep working with other adjacent access.
Thank you.
Another funding, we did get funding. Well, no, we put in for funding for the South Fork boat ramps, 2 more new ones, and hoping those get funded. We haven't heard back on all of our bill projects that got funded. We did get funded 7 across the state, and that was not one of the 7. So we're kind of keeping our fingers crossed. So and the last thing on my list was just sage grouse. But it's Park County cooperating agency, and just wanted to update you on that. We had a state safe grouse update, kind of a luncheon the other day over the webinar, and it's just kind of sitting in development of that, coming out with the different alternatives and putting out 5 alternatives for public comment and getting feedback on those. And, it didn't give me a good warm fuzzy for exactly when that'll be coming out, and get all the comment back and be able to take those comments, make any changes, and then come out with a preferred alternative that BLM nationwide has, or is each state or each state is going to be doing their own record of decision for that. So that's kind of where that's at.
Okay. I think Commissioner Livingston is our rep on that, and he's out today, but I think he's been trying to stay on top of that one. Okay.
Yeah, Madam Chair, that is the one that I believe there's 13 counties that have signed up, and we split it. We included a consultant, if you will, DA. Is that correct? Yeah, I can't remember what their agency is, to help represent the western half of Wyoming as
D&G.
D&G, yeah. And then on the other side is on the eastern part. But at any rate, I do know that there's been several comments that I'm the backup for Lee on the sage grouse, but so I get the emails, and the frustration of it just went to a halt, and where we at on that. So if there's any way that you could send out to the cooperators an email saying where you are in that process, I think that would be helpful. I know there's across the state, everybody's kind of wondering what's going on. And really, they're kind of the same with the grazing revisions. That, I mean, it was just bam, bam, and then all of a sudden nothing for 6 months now.
not heard anything in Grayson conditions. It comes up at our state meetings.
That actually started probably 3 years ago and the administration change said they were halting it until they had a chance to review it, and then they reviewed it. We had a couple of meetings and same way, we're sitting waiting for a preferred alternative.
I'll try to get an update on that.
And I'm the contact on that one.
I know they had started on, I was the Chalice, Idaho field manager, and the Salmon Idaho field manager was on that committee for BLM. And then when I got here, they kind of, like you said, paused on, we got here, they said, well, we're gonna kick off this grazing, but
Right.
I heard this morning the Morrison Jeep Trail Forest Service sounds like they got funding for that, so we'll just be tagging along with them to get our part of that fixed and
Understanding is it's still closed right now, except for the one ranch owner.
yeah.
Okay.
And the Forest Service, they have in their regulation the ability to do a CX on that. We might end up having to do an EA. It should be a really quick, easy, so it shouldn't.
Is there such a thing?
Yeah, it shouldn't delay the process.
Okay.
I'll let you know that it's CNEA coming out.
That's why. Okay.
So, you know, it should be involved.
Okay.
Madam Chair, that there's been some regional discussions about offering federal lands for affordable housing. Have you guys had any memos that have popped through or anything in discussion with that?
Not that I've come down to us. I know we always have a hard time with housing throughout this, our whole district, you know. Where we want to hire seasonals, but a lot of them turn us down even after they say yes, we'll take the job because they can't find housing. So that's a big issue, and we continue to talk about ways to mitigate for that. You know, either build government housing, like in Warland, we built that fire crew quarters over there, things like that. But I haven't seen it.
Anything else come to mind?
I just want to thank you for reaching out to us.
Yeah.
Like you said in here with Forest Service, and like I said, like Casey, Kate is great to work with, and keeping everybody in the loop is essential to our job anyway. So really appreciate you coming.
Yeah.
Being able to come over.
All right. Okay. Let us know if you need anything or give us a call and get you back in.
Thank
Okay. Thank you. We're really ahead of schedule.
Quickly, didn't you?
Yeah, now we're really ahead of schedule. Huh. Interesting how that happens. We really don't have anything else on the agenda till 11:15. So. I guess if you need coffee or a break, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Huh?
Thank you. The next thing on our agenda is Linda Dalton with the Powell Senior Center, request for ARP funds for a new senior center in Powell. Welcome.
Thank you.
I know we all received a packet from you, but if you would like to go ahead.
Okay.
Great.
Madam Chairman and Commissioners. Am I supposed to talk into this?
If you could, please, it helps everybody.
Or some of us.
So we have been trying to build a new senior center for now we're at 6 years. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization. We were incorporated in 1973. And our current building was, according to Senator French, who used to be on this committee, our current building was built in the 30s or 40s. We've been in it for 48 years. So a few things to point out is we are not ADA compliant. Our building, the walls, the floors, the foundation, everything's deteriorating. We have electrical and plumbing problems that they can't even be maintained anymore. We have no parking. Well, we have 12 parking spots around our building, but we have people, 40, 50, we've had 90 in there before, where they're parking 2 blocks away in summer heat and icy sidewalks, doesn't work. Our upstairs heater, where all of our offices are, is out. It's too old to be repaired. We checked into it. There's a 9-month wait to get a new heater at a cost of around $18,000. So we have such an increased need for our services. Last year, and by last year, I said it was February 1 of 22 to January 31 of 23. We provided almost 72,000 services, and we touched 1,560 individual clients. So our building is way too small to provide the services that we need to be providing. Our kitchen is long and narrow. There's not enough prep space or storage space. Our building or our offices are upstairs, which if you have mobility problems, they can't come up and do what they need to do. So, and then in February, we are averaging around 170 meals a day. In February, our average meals were 176. It just continues to increase. The other thing is our seniors don't have family that lives close by. So their family is the senior center. Almost daily, I will say at least once a week, we have someone who loses their significant other. They come in and the friends that they've made there, those are the ones that get them through that. The other thing is our seniors, bless their hearts, they call us, what's the phone number for this? They call us, what's the restrictions on this? What's going on in the community? Can you explain? We've got 3 or 4 that bring in piles of their mail. Can you go through this and tell us what we need, what we don't? We have some that come in that use our Wi-Fi. They come in first thing in the morning. They're there until 3:30, quarter till 4. Some in the summertime, a lot of them don't have air conditioning, so they come down there to read their book or do a puzzle. And this increase in the cost of living has hit our seniors the hardest. We have about 60% that are in the low income range. Our goal is to keep our seniors at home as long as possible. They shop locally, probably more than the younger generation. The seniors shop locally. They support our businesses. They pay property tax. So they're a very valuable group of people. So we're privately owned. We're only one of about 3 senior centers in the whole state that aren't owned by their county or the city. So we have no tax revenue service or stream to help us with our costs. There's limited private wealth in the PAL community. And we have looked into the USDA loans, but as a nonprofit, we don't have a steady income, so we can't take on a $28,000 loan payment every month. So we were gifted 1 acre of land from the Rocky Mountain Manor. It'll be on the same area as on that block that they're on. The Daniels Fund has committed $400,000 to our project, but it's contingent on us securing the bulk of it, which is $4 million. The gifted land that will expire on June 30th of this year. So we need to get our money together so that we can start doing construction. We are shovel ready, but according to our agreement with Rocky Mountain Manor, we can't start construction until we have 100% of the funding. So this new senior center will serve at least the next 3 generations. So it's an effective management of funds for the current and the future generations. Our project will sustain the quality of life for the families and the community members, providing a safe and healthy environment. And we'll be able to keep seniors in their home. Currently, and I'm sure everyone's aware that there is such a staff shortage in hospitals, long-term care service centers. But by keeping them in their homes, they're independent, they're active, and even if they do need to go to a long-term care facility, you can't get in one because they don't have the staff for it. And the other thing, the growing population of the seniors in our community, we have to be prepared for that, be ready for it. We'd like to expand our services. When we get into this new building, we're hoping to get it so that we can do medical trips to Cody from PAL. We do a lot of collaboration with Northwest College and actually PAL High School. So we'd like to get those collaborations going more. The other thing is, I just want you all to know that a senior center will never become obsolete. There's never going to be technology that's going to take the place of what we do. So what we are asking for is basically anything we can get, but ideally, we would like to ask for $4 million for our project. If that's not possible, if we could do like 1 million this year and $1 million next year. But we do have that deadline of June 30th that we have to meet. Okay. Any questions?
Okay, you said you're shovel ready. Does that mean the building plans and architectural costs are done? They're paid for?
They most of them, I would say 90% of them are.
Okay, so that's all been taken care of.
We still, Madam Chairman, we still need to do the subdivision. But it's
For the land,
Uh-huh.
you mean, okay. And that's in the city limits, right? So it'll go through city
Yes.
hall, okay. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There's absolutely no question in my mind that you've outlived your life in your old building and the need for a new one. No doubt about that. The price tag's shocking. My question, I guess, is with the manor, are you locked into a specific square footage of design that you currently have? Can it be downsized and downsized a little? You know, you mentioned that it would estimated be used for 3 generations, but I mean, can it be designed where you can be added on in 10 years, 20 years? You know, and downsize, at least get your foot in the door. I'm a math guy too, and I wish we could just throw all the money that you need, but that's just not, I don't feel that that's possible. We have too many questions out there. I know that we somewhat have a little windfall with this so-called PILT ARPA money,
Mhm.
but that's not 100% yet. You know, we do have a portion of it, but and there's a lot of other infrastructure projects that we have already requested and designs for. So I guess my question is, you know, we've already spent 152,000 on architecture type work. Is there a possibility of renegotiating with the manor to do it in stages to where you can at least get moved and get started?
Where's my group here?
I can address that question.
You just identify yourself, please.
I'm an engineer, so I'm familiar with the design and the plans for the new facility. I don't think that your idea is out of the question. I doubt seriously if downsizing would lower the cost substantially. In other words, if it was adequate to handle today's senior population, it would be large enough that it would be costly. But I think that I can't speak for the board, but I think that they've always been open to acquiring an existing building and remodeling it if it suits, you know, their needs. That opportunity just hasn't presented itself, but that might be a way to reduce the cost.
And your name, please, sir?
Ron Smith.
Thank you.
I will say that our cost prior to COVID was 3.2 million. It's now 6.3 million.
Yeah. Amazing. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I'm missing it somewhere. I'm just curious of the square footage.
Square footage of the building?
Yes.
8,500?
Okay.
8725.
87, okay.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Linda, are there any other grants or anything else that you have possibly in the works to besides the county that you're looking at right now?
So thank you for asking that. So on December 15th, I presented in front of State Lands and Investment. We asked for $4,021,000. We were tabled. We were out of money. We were applying under the Health and Human Services portion of that ARPA funds. State Auditor Racine made it very clear that we did not qualify for that much. We were asking for 25%, or we were asking for 75% of our building, what they would cover. I think if we could get 50% of it, then we would probably be able to qualify for that money. They ran out of money for 2022. Our project was not denied, it was tabled. What they told us is if they got additional funds, those projects that were tabled would be reevaluated or reconsidered.
At the next SLID meeting.
Yeah, when we called to find out when that would be, they told us to just watch for those meetings.
Okay. So it's still on the table down there.
A portion of it is, yeah.
Okay.
Perhaps Senator Larson might give us an idea on some ideas on SLID dollars possibly coming in very soon.
Madam Chairman, again, Dan Larson, Senate from Powell and Bighorn County area. We did bring this up in the body in the Senate as an amendment and didn't have very good luck. I was trying to get, there's 4 others throughout the state that are trying to apply for similar funds. They total, I think, 17 million between all 4 of them total. And I think they were all kind of stable, as far as I know. Yeah, there is money out there that the SLID can, you know, expand. It's just if we can get them on board, I don't know. There was quite a discussion amongst them that they don't quite meet the ARPA regulations or rules or whatever, but I kind of beg to differ that
there's other places in there where if you can explain your needs and why that needs it, I think they could get it. But, I know Treasurer Kurt Myers behind us, and we can sure fight harder, when it comes up. That boy, if we could get a little from the county, it'd be fantastic to go down there and say, we're getting more and more seed money to help us out. It would sure help.
Any other questions, thoughts? Where are we? There's no question, there's a need. We just have to figure out what we can or can't do. And as Commissioner Field said, we're still in the process of evaluating the funds that we've received and what we need to do as far as county buildings and repairs. We get bad news every other week of something failing. Some are not too expensive and some are pretty expensive, but anyway, we're still working through some of that. But I certainly, we understand the need. I don't know what your thoughts are.
Well, I would definitely see the need. I think we need to work through it and see what we can after we look at the other projects we've got going on and see what we can contribute. And I think the Senator said, if we can figure out a way to commit an amount where they can take back and say, okay, they're committed. I don't think we can just outright give an amount until we know, but certainly I think it would be something to work through with our other project to see what we can commit.
Madam Chair, the second part of our funds coming in will be, I believe, at the end of June.
That's the plan. There's still some discussion about whether that'll get here or not, but the plan is that it'll be here.
We don't count that until it's actually here, so which is a smart government move, I think. And start spending before you got it. If we use some of that money as leverage, possibly for the SLIB, as Commissioner Stewart was going at, possibly you might be able to get the 4 million or whatever, but I'd like to find out more a little bit, at least with the SLIB. The deal problem is you're running into a deadline too.
Right.
So, we really can't, we do have a little bit left over from the original 6 million, but it's certainly not, the amount that you're looking at. So we can't really give you a definitive until we actually get that money in.
And I think that plays into the fact that we have two pots here. One pot is definitely related to the same thing that Senator Larson was talking about, where the COVID is the big catch theme on that funds. This newer funds is general funds. So it does not have those criteria, so it wouldn't be as tied in strings as the other. And that's the funding that we've gotten half of it. We're still looking at getting the other half, but that to me would be the funds that would somewhat be available in some level, because there are no strings that come with that on the COVID piece, whether you'd qualify or not. I don't know if we want to jump through those hoops. But
So, Madam Chair, what is your estimated deadline to qualify for this next round of SLIB?
I don't know what to say there, Madam Chairman. I could sure give him a call and see
what have you heard, CJ?
There was a big email today that they think they're gonna have a meeting on the 7th.
On the 7th of April? Okay, the newest email this morning says the 7th of April. Okay. I guess there's two sides to that. That would be handy to know, but it sounds like they have a better shot if we've at least stated we'll commit something. That's the way I'm hearing it.
Today.
Yeah. I mean, that's my thought processes. Does that sound like what you're looking for?
Absolutely, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Madam Chair, I would like to have the spreadsheet in front of me, but I'm going on memory. So I'm going to spin this idea and then you can tell me whether or not, whether it's in the purse strings, because I don't have that spreadsheet in front of me. But I know we really need no question, we're already started on the HVAC system. We know that's gonna be approximately 4 million to redo the system here in the courthouse. And then the sewage lagoon part, which these are infrastructure projects for the county that I definitely am support of because they will save us in the long run.
Right.
That's what I don't want to spend money on, is something that's gonna cost us. And you're gonna have those maintenance costs, so you're gonna probably be coming later for help to pay the electric bill. I don't know that, but at any rate, with the money that we've already allocated for gravel and a couple other small things, and I do know we talked about this morning, another 120,000 that possibly needs to be put aside. Do we have $1 million to commit to this at this time? That might be a stretch, simply because the second round of this money that we supposedly are going to be getting is already in question. I've been in contact with some people that it's scary. They're already trying to pull that. So we may not get it. And if that be the case, we're broke. Again,
Well,
not broke, but I mean,
right.
we've spent it all.
Expended.
Am I pretty close to that?
Do you have those two sheets from last month? No, but last month's would be sufficient. If you could grab that really quick.
Well, I know between the sewer and
Right.
and the HVAC, there's 6 million alone. That's all of the pill done. We can use a lot of the
5.5.
original COVID
Okay.
ARPA on the
HVAC,
HVAC.
which we have about 2.5, I believe, left. That's what I wanted to. look at.
Right. So that is not gonna leave a whole lot left if we do $1 million,
If we don't get the second.
but I would be willing
Let's
to
see
do that.
what-
If
okay.
that would get your. Cause I did definitely need it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not that far away from being a senior anymore. I never used to think that, but I mean,
From being a daily visitor, is that what you're?
well, and I mean, it's so great to go visit with most of the people there. I mean, we are a retirement community, but most of them are born and raised here. They paid the pretty big price over the years of supporting this county and stuff, so I don't really have a problem giving back to them, but
Let me check that. To me or to everybody?
Everybody.
would she send it on the email?
It's on email. So the first funding that has the COVID tie to it.
That one has some deadlines, so, but I think we'll be able to hit most of those with the HVAC. Hopefully it doesn't dry
It
out.
has a
that
little
long.
over $1 million left, so let's look at the other one. And that, the only thing that we've put 1,282,000 out of that,
That we fully
out of the
committed.
6 that we have. And we have 4 million committed. Yeah, it's close. Very close. If in fact the other doesn't come. But we won't know that until June or July.
So, Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
if I could, we'll see if it dies for lack of sound. I move to approve contingent on collecting the rest of the funds needed to commit $1 million to the Powell Senior Center from the, I'm gonna call it the PILT ARPA.
General
grant-
ARPA.
General
ARPA funds, please.
grant fund.
And I would agree with Commissioner Teal that, you know, it's again.
Is that a second? I'm sorry.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
for discussion.
Okay.
That there is possibly, you know, if you run into issues with SLID 2, that there possibly in July, we may have some more funding. There's a possibility for that. But again, we can't really spend the money that we don't have. And we do have some major projects coming up, but some of those possibly could be moved over to the July funding as well, so. But I believe at least $1 million to get started now might be hopeful, when you address the slip.
Yes, Senator.
Madam Chairman, if I can make a comment, maybe, there are, the other $2 million, could you explain, is there support within the community of Powell that you're doing a fundraiser? Is that correct?
We have done several fundraisers. And we've got some other places that once we get the bulk of the money that they have said that they would provide to us.
I noticed in your correspondence that there are others that if it gets closer, they might give more, knowing that it is a for real project. If I can word it that way, that's not really correct, but okay.
Madam Chair.
Yes, sir.
Correct me, so there, the SLIB is meeting the 7th of April? Is that what was said? So don't we need to get on the 4th? And this getting tight to the wire.
We do.
I just would feel more comfortable taking I support the idea and I support the project. I just would like to take a little bit more time to look at this deeper, to see just kind of where we're at. I hate to put them off till the 4th, but I would like to see us wait until that 4th to act on something when we have a little more time to look at the funding deeper.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And commissioners, I think I would have a better chance with SLIB if I could go to them and ask for less.
I guess I'm not sure. This is just my thought. I'm not sure I'd ask for less. I would show that you have the support of $1 million from the county. If they want to give a little less, that's up to them, but I wouldn't ask for any less at this point. Because if they see the support from the county, if we go forward with that and they know the need from the community, that may push them to that edge of the amount that you're asking for. So I don't know that I'd ask for any less, depending on what, because if we could give the whole thing, I think we would, but we can't at this point. So I think I would continue to work with them. I guess my concern is, and I haven't worked with the SLIB board for a lot of years, but my concern is when you need to be able to provide that information from them on the update, or if it can come on the day of the meeting. In referring to your waiting till the 4th, if their meeting is on the 7th, do you have to provide anything else to them ahead of the 7th? Or do you walk in on the 7th and tell them, well, we've, maybe gained this $1 million from the county, can we move forward? I don't know what that time frame needs to be, or if they need to know that ahead of time. Just referring to your thoughts about waiting till the 4th to make a decision. Anybody have any thoughts?
Madam Chair, so what they told us is that the grant that we submitted to them, that grant was tabled.
Okay.
We will not have to redo our grant.
Okay.
I believe that if I went to them and said that, we have some support from our county commissioners, then I think that's going to make a big, huge difference.
I guess my point is to do it on that day or to do it ahead of that. CJ, you seem to have some thoughts.
Just same email says, should the applicant not require the full funding, please contact SLIB to update the amount by no later than the end of the day on this Friday, the 24th.
Therein lies a dilemma.
Question for Senator. I guess first, Linda, when you guys presented, did somebody physically present to the SLIB? Were they down there to present? You said you did it. Okay. To the senator, would it improve their chances if somebody from the county was there to also, represent the county? Is because we run into this on this last deal where we ended up with a SLIB grant because some of the other people didn't have a representative there. So would it behoove us to have somebody down there with the county to say we support this in some way or another with funding?
Madam Chairman, I think that always helps. If you're personally there, it sends big message.
Right.
Just so far to get there.
The importance.
Such a big project. So important. You're right.
I do have a motion on the table to approve from the general ARPA dollars of $2 million on the project at this time. How much? $1 million?
1 million.
No, 1 million. Any further discussion on the motion as it reads? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Aye.
Gonna say aye. Only takes 3, so motion passes. Of course, this is all contingent on the project moving forward, the way that it can, but right now, I guess we're committed for 1 million. Move forward. I know that's not all you asked for, but all we can do at this point. And I certainly understand your concern.
And Madam Chair, I would be willing to go down to the slip.
Okay,
I do support it. I just,
we'll keep that in mind.
okay.
Okay, thank you. If you'll let us know any updates, appreciate it. Timing, whatever. I know CJ's getting emails, but if you would keep us apprised of what needs to happen down there. Okay.
Madam Chair and Commissioners, thank you so much. This is so wonderful. I do want to throw in, I threw in a newsletter for our senior center. So if you're ever in Powell, pick a date when we're having something you like and come have lunch with us, please.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now you just gotta get rid of those trees over there at the manor.
Yeah. Well, the city was really excited that we were going to do that.
I bet they.
Finally get rid of those trees that need to be.
Floodplain.
Rough,
Hey.
man. Yes, that one use that's approximately 700,000.
They do update.
Until we get.
Oh, you want to give it to Jolene, have her change it. That's just my question.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, she can redo it.
I think with that kind of commitment, I think it's a little more to.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for coming. Okay.
And I just really appreciate your.
I wish we could do more, but my rough math here doesn't leave us a hell of a lot of room with what we, and I can't spend money we don't have yet.
Well, at least you know if you get some money where it goes.
That's right.
That's that's not a bad problem though, is it?
You need to worry about the library over there too.
Oh, we got 700,000.
It's Kim's fault.
Well,
Kim's. Okay. The next thing on our agenda, now that we're behind again. Request for support Beartooth Highway Recreation Study. That actually came to us through phone conversations with a few different groups. So we are putting it out there. Cook City, Silvergate, Montana Recreation Access Research Proposal. Is there anyone here that wants to talk on this? Okay, thank you. If you just identify yourself for the record, Mike. Appreciate it.
Thank you. My name is Mike Darby. I'm here representing Park County Travel Council. Appreciate coming in front of you, Madam Overfield and commissioners. Park County Travel was given a grant by the state Office of Tourism for $600,000. And so Park County Travel studied different ways how to spend this money, how to invest it in our community, invest it in our tourism infrastructure, not to just spend it, but look at it as an investment for the future. We allocated some money to study plowing the plugs is what we'll call it. We've gone through different options and things like this, and Park County, Montana is going to participate in this study, both endorsing it and monetarily, which I think is a huge thing. And we've engaged RRC Associates, which is Recreation Research, to do this study for us. And I guess basically we're just looking for an endorsement from the Park County Commissioners of Wyoming to engage in the study with Park County, Montana. If you got a check, we'll take that too. But,
I think we just gave it all away.
I think you did, and I think that's really honorable, and it dug to my heartstrings. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Madam Chair, Mike, thanks for coming in and representing this. I have been getting some feedback since this hit the fan. How do you answer when people say this is just about the plug, your study should go further and actually find out the end result, because plowing the plug is going to create as many problems as it is going to fix one. So why not address that, have your study address all of it and do more than just opening the road?
Okay, thanks for the question, Commissioner. Basically, the study is all kinds of tourism, whether it's snowmobiling, wildlife viewing, snowshoeing, different things of this nature. It also has a humanitarian component, which gives services to Cook City much quicker than if they come down through the Montana Avenue, so to speak.
Okay, but that is up for debate in some people's minds that by helping one, you're killing another.
Well, I think that's one reason why we're doing this study is just to find that out. And if we have an unbiased study and we put that out there, it should lead us to that conclusion, and hopefully we can come up with the right answers after we look at the study from both sides.
I have a question just on, you just made the comment, an unbiased study. And yet some of the comments, as you mentioned, I've gotten some of the same phone calls and letters. And people seem to be worried about the tourism industry asking for the study, that it will be favorable to the tourism industry and not necessarily as openly factual in all other areas.
Right.
How would you address that?
How would I address that? I would say that basically what they're going to do is see the feasibility of it and how it's going to affect the residents, the businesses of Cook City, and also how it affects Park County, Wyoming businesses and their tourist industry. It should look at it from both sides.
Will Yellowstone Park be involved in this study? Do you know?
It'll probably ask certain questions. I mean, there's different sections to this. I don't know if you've seen this.
It's just cursory.
Okay. The initial part of it is the resident sentiment survey. And there's also a secondary one, which is visitor recreation access survey. And then it moves on to a secondary data analysis and tries to compile everything so that we can all look at it in a intelligent manner.
Okay. Sure.
Several questions, Mike. Thanks for coming. Go. Thank you. How was RRC vetted?
How were they vetted?
Yes.
We went through several of them. One was the University of Wyoming. There was another one, I can't remember it. There was 3 of them that we looked at. And we looked at one that was actually appeared to look at both sides, on both sides of the state line, so to speak. Sure. Instead of the UW one. And then there was also a time, time is of the essence, so to speak. I mean, not short time, but over 2 years, a year to 2 years to get this done. And this seemed to be the most fit, the best fit in all components.
Okay. And I 100% support a study for this. My question is, as I researched this weekend with over RRC and I look at those players involved, there's an awful lot of direct involvement with a lot of these players on RRC, with Yellowstone Park, Glacier Park, a lot of these national parks. So my concern is how much emphasis they're going to put on that. There's a lot of obviously background in that tends to lead towards environmental in looking at these people. And again, I 100% support it. I'm just not sure that RRC is the right people. And then I guess what scares me a little bit is when I look at their client map of where they've done this research. It's heavily concentrated in Colorado. I get that's where they're from. Wyoming has got a little bit towards Jackson and obviously the Cook City, but then they're concentrated a lot in California and New York and some of these other areas. So my question would be, again, 100% support a study. But is this a group that would really be unbiased with their involvement in Yellowstone and their involvement in Colorado and Boulder specifically, a lot of these, now I'm not bashing any of these other states, but where they're really congregated kind of scares me a little bit.
Right, and I thoroughly understand your concern about the Colorado-based entity. That's where I came from, was Boulder County. You know, no, and I escaped Boulder County, and I think Dossie did too, obviously, but you know, that is a concern. You know, we're trying to do our best, and I think that they fit what we're looking for, at least at first blush.
Sure.
It seemed to fit the best. It really did. I mean, I understand your bias, and I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah.
There. So
Just again, a little concern, I guess, and reading their backgrounds and reading the actual players involved and what the research they do heavily in national parks and some of that kind of makes me wonder, are they geared more towards helping Yellowstone?
right. No, I thoroughly understand that too, and I'm sure that they'll do some study and interviews and things with Yellowstone, and possibly we'll have to weigh that out as it comes forward. So,
Okay, thanks, appreciate it.
Good research, Scott.
Commissioner?
Mike, how is this study different than some of the other ones that have been done on this?
This one's more broad-based. Some of them weren't quite so some of them were going to focus in on different components of this, whether it be just the tourism part, the recreation part, and everything. This one seemed to have the largest scope of study.
Bert, I know you're here for a reason.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
And council, my name is Bert Miller. I want to let you know for transparency, I represent the Wyoming State Snowmobile Association, the Cody Country Snowmobile Association, and the POP committee, which is working on some other alternatives with Highway 212. We also want to thank you before we get started for the over 40 years of being able to help promote snowmobiling and help in taking care of Pilot Creek parking area. I mean, that's been a huge thing that you've done. It's been a huge thing for our support, and it's been an unbelievable asset to Cook City. And I hope that those folks understand that. Snowmobiling in a whole, as you guys have probably looked at the University of Wyoming study of 2021, basically brings in a lot of money to our state. About 250 million, it's estimated in that report about 7.8 million overall expenditures in this area. So we're very, very cognizant. We want to be very, very careful of what we do. We also in that study we ranked in Wyoming 4.5 out of 5 stars as what our trail systems are. It's because we have great parking areas, great facilities, we've got great connecting trails. That's why we're so adamant about severing this trail system. We do not support the study at this point. One, we'd like to see more input from YDOT, expenditures, their input that they've been doing some studying. We'd like to see the sheriff's input, search and rescue. We are also very concerned about the 2-week polling that would be done in the parking area over a 4-month span of the season. You know, some of that polling has been done in the past and didn't turn out to have the best knowledge we've had. We also want to know the economics. If we want to talk about the road close, what's the economics benefit that we're all counties and states are getting right now? If the road was open and there was no connector, we need to study about what that could do to snowmobiling, or how does that economic work? We've been working with the POP committee, and we've been talking. It was fantastic. The reason I was here early is to hear what Casey McQuiston had to say, and while we were out there, we reiterated that probably in May we want to sit down with him and talk about an alternative trail. With that alternative trail, then of course we need to get the snow out with some of the. I don't want to go too quick, but we want to be able to look and walk some of that with state trails to see where could we put in a new trail. Along with that new trail would also come working with the Forest Service out of Cook City and stuff about a new parking area, so we could have somewhat of a balance. So what would this look like if we had a new trail
and another parking area, and the road is open. Could this be a win-win for people? It's been 40 years, we've argued about open floor. So we're really wanting to study that even more. And kind of closing, you know, we know as motorized users, we've been squeezed and squeezed until what we have is what we have. We know we're always fighting with the WSA, on top, with the Beartooth, and so on and so forth. We can't afford to lose any more trail. And we've got a wonderful area that connects two states. Actually, Wyoming has a couple of corners where we're wonderful at that. We want to make sure that we have that connection, and we want to make sure, as we've read this study, I've read this over and over and over. It's very broad based. I understand that. But if you're not at the table expressing your concerns, it won't get into the study. And if the study doesn't represent all the shareholders, then what do we have? We have more arguing and fighting and stuff. And we also do not want to see what's happened in Cook City's community at Dawes. That's a very hot spot. The town's divided on this, been divided and divided. My personal views, I would like to see Park County, Montana take this whole thing and lead with it, because we've been helping for 40 years. But that's just my personal view, because I think Cook City gains to benefit more than we do. With that, we appreciate you allowing us to visit with you, and we look forward to having more input on this project.
Thank you. Thank you, Sam.
Bert, it sounds like you're already predicting what the survey is gonna come out with.
No, I don't want to say that I'm going to put in stone what things are going to come out with. What I'm trying to tell you is that we see where we need to have more input on this. We've had surveys and surveys on this stuff before. They've been for 40 years. There's been plus minus divides and so on and so forth on these surveys. And there's weak areas that we see that are from the past to now.
I guess that would be a question that I would ask Mike. I guess when I look at the title recreation access research for Cook City and Silvergate, it would automatically include snowmobiling.
I would think so, Madam Chairman.
That I guess, and I'm wondering why you're getting the impression that where that's coming from, that snowmobiling wouldn't be included in this study, and where their research would not be giving you a seat at the table per se.
Madam Chair, what we feel is we want to have a seat at the table right from the get-go. If you're not at these meetings, your constituents aren't up to date on things. This study does not talk about anything about an alternate trail or anything like that. It talks about a highway. It does not talk about an alternate trail. So why not have it in this study to research out the possibility of an alternate trail? We're talking about, with the POP committee, we had said 2 to 5 years. We only adopted that verbiage because that's usually what states and federal government says. We're talking with Casey, basically, if we really got going on this, possibly 2 years. Well, 2 years to get a new trail, and we also want to make sure there's a parking area that would go with that, somewhere around Cook City where they feel. Because what'll happen is when you open that road up and you flood trucks and trailers in the winter, the user's experience goes right down, you know what, and it affects all of us. It's all about the user experience, and we've got it in Wyoming. We've worked our tail off for decades to have that. And if you look at it, there isn't a ton of mileage on the Shoshone Forest. Shoshone Forest is roughly, correct me, about 2.4 million acres, give or take. And only about 568,000 of that is can be utilized for motorized use, which is mostly snowmobile. So.
Okay. Commissioner?
I have a question for Mike. Your representation of the Travel Council on Recreation. We were approached for this letter of support, I asked Commissioner Livingston, and he's not here to defend himself, so I'm going to pick on him as our liaison to Yellowstone National Park. I'm just going to throw you a what if, and maybe you've already visited with Cam Shawley, but what would benefit would Park County have if we support this and they open the plow the plug. And Yellowstone Park says, well, Cook City's no longer isolated, so we're no longer going to clear from Cook City to Gardner. So you just lost all of your access that you thought this recreation was going to open up. Have you visited with Ken? Do they have, is that out of the question? Is it a possibility? I'm just curious.
I think that's a great question, Wade. I have not personally visited with Cam on that, and I'm not aware of whether Ryan or anybody else has visited with Cam on that. But that's a great question, and I'm sure that Cam will be asked that down the road. So
That's why I asked if Yellowstone would be involved, because I think the
Right.
future of what they decide to
Right.
do comparative to
Right.
what's shown can
Right.
change the
We might
picture.
be shooting ourselves in the foot for opening this plug, because then if they close that in.
could be. I don't think they will, but
I
that's
don't
my
think so
personal-
either, but
That's my personal thought.
Well, the other thing is the study doesn't do anything.
Right.
It gives us information. I think it gives everybody information. It doesn't commit us, to my understanding, to
Right.
doing
It
anything. Doesn't commit travel council.
No.
It's another leg in a whole long process that may or may not come out with good information as far as personal opinions or what's considered, but there's no commitment to match this study with anything.
No.
Okay.
It's basically just an information gathering process and compiling it to where we can understand it and make a great intelligent decision down the road.
as one commissioner, I'm not opposed to the study at all. I'm just not totally in favor of supporting something we don't know what the outcome will be. Do you follow? I mean, if it is one-sided and my name's tagged to it, I'm not in favor of that. So, I would love to look at it and say, yeah, I like that study, and we endorse it at that time. But at this point in time, I'm not in favor of endorsing a study that has too many open ends. That's just me.
Yes, Brian?
Madam Chair. I might have missed this, so I apologize. Brian Edwards, County Engineer. You mentioned that you got some funding, about 600,000 or so, not necessarily for this, but rather, and maybe I missed it, but what is the consultant estimating the price tag for this study? I might have missed that. I was just curious what we're talking about.
Probably 65,000 ballpark. I mean, plus or minus might be 70, might be 60.
Okay.
And Park County, our estimate, Park County Travel Council's estimate was 33,000.
Okay. Ballpark. And what did the Park County, Montana commit for?
They were at least going to match that, is my understanding. So
Just curious. Thank you.
Their county was going to match, the Park County, Montana was going to match that, not Montana Travel Council.
right, Park County, Montana.
Just for clarification. Okay, pleasure of the board. Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I believe there are some holes with the study, just the time period actually of the being put together, a 2-week period and such, but basically, like you said, it's just a study. And it's not gonna cost us anything. And there's ability to poke holes into it after it's put together. So I will move to support the Beartooth Highway Rec study, as long as there's no money involved. I'll make that motion to approve the study.
Letter of support.
To support it,
Letter
send a letter of support for it.
I have a second to the motion. Hearing none. Motion dies for lack of a second. Okay. I guess we'll wait and see.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. That's you guys.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, we appreciate it. We do look forward to working with all players on this as we move down the road.
Okay, thank you. This is the corrected one.
Gibbs fault.
So, Okay, the last thing in our agenda, Brian Edwards, Park County Engineer, Public Works Department, review and consider approval of agreement between Park County and Fowler Construction for CMR services for the Powell landfill equipment maintenance shop.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This should only take about 30 minutes.
Oh, thank you. My stomach isn't growling over here.
I won't read all 30 some pages, but
That'd be good.
as you know, we selected a contractor for a construction manager at risk to file their construction, and that was awarded earlier this month, I believe. And so now we're at the point of entering into a contract and they give us for the Powell landfill maintenance shop, which is planned. And basically we worked with Fowler and the county attorney's office, and they're using an AIA standard agreement. We modified it when we did the coroner's building with some things that made us a little more applicable to government and Park County things and Wyoming preferences and things like that. So all that's been added as part of the template. And then the county attorney had a paragraph that they wanted deleted that had to do with insurance and additional insured, which could affect government immunity, and he wanted to be sure that didn't conflict. So other than that, I think it's very similar to the agreement that was approved for the coroner's building. And I might add that the price that becomes Exhibit A, which is that guaranteed maximum amount as part of this, that will come back in once we get a little further along in what we're doing and get the details worked out. So that will be a kind of an amendment to this agreement, and that's standardly how it goes.
Has the contractor reviewed the agreement, you said?
They have, yes, and they found it accepted. Agreed.
Questions? Pleasure of the board.
Madam Chair, I move to approve Fowler Construction as a CMAR and have the chair sign that document.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the CMR agreement with Fowler Construction for the Powell landfill equipment maintenance shop as presented. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, motion passes.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
30 minutes.
Thanks, Brian.
I need one more motion.
Madam Chair, I move we adjourn.
Second.
Scott, okay. Okay. Colleen will move to go after that. Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Colleen, did you get the motion to adjourn?
Oh, no.
Angold and Stewart.
Did we go on?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Thank you.
He just has
Maybe
to sign it.
we should talk RC.
Yeah.